Welcome to Storytime with Finnley. Tonight, I have 5 spine-chilling midnight stories just for you. So get cozy, dim the lights, and let's dive into the unknown. Story 1. The Whispering Woods. At the edge of the small, isolated village stood the Whispering Woods, a forest shrouded in mystery and fear. Locals told tales of eerie voices that echoed through the trees at night, whispers that seemed to call out to anyone who dared to venture too close. Despite the warnings, curiosity got the best of young Anna, who decided to explore the forest one moonlit night. As Anna stepped deeper into the woods, the whispers grew louder, almost as if they were surrounding her. The voices were soft, barely audible, but she could make out fragments of words. Pleas for help, warnings to leave. She followed the sound, her heart pounding in her chest, until she stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin hidden among the trees. The door creaked open as she approached, revealing a dusty interior and a strange old journal lying on a table. With trembling hands, Anna opened the journal, discovering pages filled with accounts of people who had entered the woods and never returned. The final entry, dated over a century ago, spoke of a curse placed upon the forest, trapping souls forever within its bounds. As Anna read the last words, the whispers around her grew deafening, and she realized too late that she had become the next to be ensnared by the Whispering Woods. Story 2. The Midnight Visitor. Emily had always been a light sleeper, but the disturbances started soon after she moved into her new apartment. Every night, precisely at midnight, she would hear soft footsteps in the hallway outside her bedroom. At first, she dismissed them as creaks of an old building, but the sounds grew more deliberate, more menacing as nights passed. One particularly sleepless night, Emily decided to confront the source of the noise. She sat up in bed, clutching a flashlight, and waited. At the stroke of midnight, the footsteps began again, slow and measured. Gathering her courage, she flung open her bedroom door and shone the light into the hallway. To her horror, the beam illuminated the shadowy figure of a tall man, his face obscured by darkness. The figure didn't move, but instead stared at her with an intensity that chilled her to the bone. Emily's flashlight flickered and died, plunging the hallway into darkness. The footsteps resumed, but this time they were inside her apartment, inching closer to her. She backed away, heart racing, and in the pitch black, she felt a cold hand touch her shoulder. The next morning, her apartment was empty, and Emily was gone, leaving behind only the flashlight still lying in the hallway. Story 3. The Haunted Mirror. David loved antiquing, always on the hunt for unique treasures. One weekend, he stumbled upon an old ornate mirror at a flea market. It was beautiful, with intricate carvings around the frame, but there was something unsettling about its reflective surface. Despite a vague feeling of unease, he purchased it and hung it in his living room. That night, David awoke to a strange sensation, as if someone was watching him. He got up and walked to the living room, finding the mirror faintly glowing in the dark. As he approached, he saw a figure standing behind him in the reflection, though the room was empty. The figure was a gaunt, ghostly woman, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. Panicked, David turned to face the room, but it was empty. When he looked back at the mirror, the woman's reflection was closer, her hand reaching out toward him. He tried to remove the mirror, but it was as if it had fused with the wall. The following nights were worse. The woman began speaking to him, whispering of her tragic fate and begging for release. Desperate, David smashed the mirror, but it only released the spirit into his home. From that night on, he was never alone, haunted by the woman from the mirror who now sought to claim him as her companion in the afterlife. Story 4. The Phantom Train. Every midnight, like clockwork, a train whistle would pierce the silence of the small town of Ashton. Yet there hadn't been a functioning railway there for decades. The townsfolk spoke of the Phantom Train, a ghostly locomotive said to carry the souls of those who had died tragically on its tracks. Curious and skeptical, Tom decided to investigate. He camped near the old abandoned railway station on the outskirts of town, armed with a camera and a flashlight. As the clock struck midnight, the distant whistle sounded, and a thick fog rolled in. Tom's flashlight flickered as he heard the unmistakable rumble of an approaching train. Out of the mist, the Phantom Train emerged, its spectral form glowing eerily. Tom could see passengers inside, their faces twisted in eternal anguish. He raised his camera, but the sight before him paralyzed him with fear. The train slowed as it neared the station, and the doors opened with a creak. A voice, cold and hollow, called out to him, beckoning him to board. Tom felt an overwhelming pull, and unable to resist, he stepped forward. The next morning, his camping gear was found abandoned by the tracks, but Tom was never seen again. Story 5. The Lighthouse Keeper. On the remote coast stood an old lighthouse, long out of commission, but still an eerie landmark for passing ships. The lighthouse was said to be haunted by its last keeper, who had vanished without a trace during a fierce storm decades ago. Stories told of his ghost still tending the light, guiding lost souls to the afterlife. One stormy night, Claire, a photographer, sought shelter in the lighthouse. As she explored, she found old yellowed logs detailing the keeper's daily life. The last entry mentioned seeing something in the storm, a ship that had disappeared years before. As thunder roared outside, Claire heard footsteps on the stairs, heading to the light room at the top. Curiosity piqued, she followed the sound. At the top, she saw the spectral figure of the lighthouse keeper, his ghostly form illuminated by the lightning. He turned to her, eyes filled with a sorrowful plea. Claire realized he was trapped, endlessly searching for the lost ship. As she reached out to touch him, a blinding flash of light engulfed the room. When she came to, the storm had passed, and the lighthouse stood silent. The ghost of the keeper had vanished, finally finding peace, but Claire knew she had experienced something beyond the realm of the living. Thanks for joining me on Storytime with Finnley. If you enjoyed the tales, like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more. Sleep tight and remember, some stories linger in the dark.